Welcome to the LaunchFamily Podcast, where we make sense of modern parenting one real conversation at a time. I'm your host, Jessica Shelley, a mom of six, former teacher, and your go-to friend when parenting gets messy and unpredictable. Well, today's guest is Chris Miller, a dad of two, tech entrepreneur, street talker, and all-around realist when it comes to the chaos of raising kids while scaling companies. He's here to unpack the impossible balancing act of startups and sippy cups, emotional regulation in dads, and why sometimes you just have to let your kid pee outside. Chris, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks. Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me, Jessica.
Yes. Okay. Well, I know that we go way back, but let's give our audience a little bit of background on who you are as a founder, husband, dad. Tell us, who is Chris?
Sure. I should say Jessica and I were fellow serial LinkedIn posters, right? And that's how I think the initial relationship came to be. Yeah. But as far as, the background, as far as that introduction is concerned, so I started in a pretty normal corporate setting, which it was sort of the safest bet, right? Out of college, I was happy to get the job. I had worked I did an internship with this company. After about 2.5, 3 years ish, I realized that I wanted to kind of raise the stakes quite a bit. And so we co-founded, I should say I co-founded my first company at the age of 25. We ran it to seven figures in revenue, and eventually we got acquired. That was like 2017, 2018-ish to 2024-ish. And then I founded my next company. My eldest daughter was born in the middle of my first company, 2019. And my second boy, my son, was born towards the tail end of it, right? So he's Nolan C. He's 2022. And I'd say, yeah, just what sticks out the most for me, they get more serious when you have kids. But it wasn't a realization. It came in waves for me, right? So it didn't happen overnight. I had to kind of, eventually it hit.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I didn't realize our stories are similar. I co-founded my first company at 26. At that time, I already had three kids, though. And then I had three more while I was doing that first venture. Now, Launch Family is that second venture. So super excited that we've connected. And I'm excited to dive into your story as a dad and how this experience has, shaped your perspective on things. But what does your day to day look like balancing work and parenting as a startup founder?
No, I'd say the first thing that comes to mind is I realized, you have these quarters where you get lots done and then some quarters where you don't get much done. It feels like. And one of the recurring patterns was that I realized I had to get more done by 12 p.m. Than most people were getting done in a full day. So that way, if something did come up with the kids or I needed a break or I wanted to spend time with them, I was as equally as productive as anyone else, including the competition, right? Now, yeah, I mean, I would direct it right back at you, right? You have about 24 of them running around there. So what's your answer to that one?
I would say that too. Maximizing the morning when it feels very productive. I usually get up earlier than my kiddos and I'll usually check in with emails, LinkedIn. I think I'm pretty much live there. That's like my third home. And yeah, then it's, off to the races with the kids. I'm at home with them while my husband works during the day. And so solo mom from 7 to 4:30. And so I usually do like work calls in the afternoons while they're resting and then, pick things up again after dinner. That's like my non-negotiable time, like 5 to 8. Don't ask me for anything related to the business. I'm spending 100% of the time with the kids. In the morning, I'm
Sure.
balancing both. You've scaled a company to millions in revenue. How did your parenting change alongside that professional growth or journey?
No, for sure. I mean, it's lots of things, right? So I realized that, you have these kinds of existential questions, right? When you're in the thick of it, either it was a really great day, a really terrible day, or somewhere in between, whether it was work related or kid related. Um, and it, you realize that, your kids, they have the power to like change the world one day, either as someone's friend, their spouse, their mother, their father. And that's a unique gift that only you, but them, they can give the world. Um, and it to me it's so like we're all here on this rock they call earth, like it's so random. So to me that's such a like it's such a wonderful thing. um and it's I would say as a result, right, it's helped me see like the humanity in things more, the varying viewpoints, if you will, because you have to raise a kid, and so many times I find myself handing out these arbitrary rules for the kids, right? Like you can't have this. And my daughter, she complies. She's maybe more like I'd say she's more agreeable. And my son, even as a 3.5-year-old, he's learned like, no, that's a complete no. Why can't I have popsicles for lunch, Dad? Right?
Yeah,
But
I
so
love.
you do see that there are multiple sides to all of these stories. I think for me, I've had to realize that it's more of a feature than it is a bug, right? And it
Mhm.
ultimately, um, it's shown me, right, that the more you can stick with someone, the more you can be present, even if even if they give you really terrible body language on a podcast, right? No, I'm kidding. Body
Like start
language is very
yelling.
good. No, right? No, I mean, even if the customer, they might not be happy now, but if you can just keep trying to stay present, and it's so hard. But I would say that's what it is. And with kiddos, right? It's like you have to be, um, you you just you're always on with them, right? And you don't reap the rewards overnight. We took my we were just on vacation with the five. She's 6 now, and he's 3.5, and it was our best flight ever. We flew cross country with them. They've flown many times, and it was the best flight ever. The 3.5-year-old started to go stir crazy around, hour 4.5, right? But I'm like, okay, you see the payoff. You see the payoff in the restraint, in the routine, all of these things. Which again, that I mean, to put it to tie that answer all together, um, the you see when you plant these seeds today, it might take a long time, right, for you to reap that. But I would say that's like one of the biggest things that I've noticed and that has changed in me is that you have to stay away from instant gratification, to sum all of that up. Yeah, that's where I'll leave that one.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I agree with that so much. Like delaying the gratification, right? Like first off, as a startup founder, nothing is built like that's worthy overnight, right? So it is like the existential delay of gratification when building a business. And then another thing that you brought up was being present. And I think that that's one of the universal threads that I've applied to both the business and also home life is that if I'm in the business, if I'm in a call, I'm 100% present right now because that's a relationship that I'm nurturing, same as at home, right? Like being present with my kids. I'm not going to be checking my phone if it's at 5 to 8 p.m. Don't ask. I'm not answering the phone. Like that is 100% whole time with the family. Helps move all of those things forward because people know that you're bought into them and the success of them. And whether, like again, the long-term gratification, you don't know how the person you're talking to on a work call is going to pop back into your life years later. Because I think that we're the perfect example of that. Like, we had discussed other things related to my previous venture like years ago. And then
Yeah.
now here we are talking about parenting, which, who knew? So, all of those things I think were some of the things that jumped out to me about that answer.
No, that's for sure. And it's for me, it's so I would run 90-day sprints in business. Um, and I would say this to my team, I'm sure I still do. What you do today will show up in the pipeline 90 days later or not, right? And it's like so amazing. You look back at those insane days you had, and days or weeks or even a few months later, you're like, oh, remember that one person I reached out to? They are either now telling me no, which is great because I've got someone on the phone, or they're telling me yes, like, hey, we're actually interested now, right? So either way, I can work with that. And I will add to what you just said, which is that it for me that 90-day thing, I'm now learning that it's not actually 90 days. It really shows up 12 to 24 months later.
Wow.
And then you're like, you're a little as a millennial, and I'm so big on instant gratification myself. Like, do you know how hard it is to not buy my kids Gushers at the store,
My
right?
gosh.
It's
Yes.
the
It
And
is
they
so
haven't, I've never bought it for them, right? It's like the expensive sugar snack, and none of their kids, they've never brought it home from school yet. I'm like, man, wait till they find out how good a fruit roll up is, right? But that's not going to be me. I will not do that to them. But 12, if you can delay that, but it's so hard as humans, right? Because we kind of want to go out and we want to slay the saber-toothed tiger now. But if you can keep on that pace for just 12 to 24 months, it is just insane what will show up later down the road. So,
Yeah. And I think too, like child development, like that's my background as an educator. Um, the payoff is that, right? Like as you just discussed with your family and traveling across the country and the flight was the best flight you've ever had. Those are those things where like you're probably not going on flights every week to like build that muscle. Like it's the things that you're doing at
yeah,
home that are also building towards that experience that puts a little bit more pressure on them to live up to those expectations, but it's been practiced in a
yeah.
multitude of contexts. Um,
That's really interesting too. Like that, and that's what it's the same thing as getting a sale, right? It doesn't we'd love it to happen every day, right? But these relationships, they take a long time. So I would say the more I consider it, right, there is so much that is analogous, right, to one and the other. So, anyways, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. What kind of boundaries or trade-offs do you set to stay present as a parent?
I don't I am going to take that maybe a way I shouldn't, which is that I don't think there are boundaries or trade-offs, right? To me, it's what can I do to advance the success rate and feeling of meaning, like for the human race, right? And I
Mhm.
know that it's maybe too grandiose for some, um, but it's like if I if I need a break so I can be much better later in the day, I have to take it. And I'm the worst about that, right? Because I will just keep going. I will keep going from one fire, from one mess, from one pretty object to the next, right? Um, and so I would say, right, you have to learn, and I'm in my 30s now, right? So I'm actually learning to do that more. Where it's like, hey, you will pay for this in a week because you will wake up on Monday and you're going to not feel like doing anything, right? So you should probably go to bed early on this Friday night, right? So to me, yeah, I don't think you should. The boundaries, okay, they're kind of obvious, right? Like, of course, you should eat 3 squares a day and drink water. What are we doing as a society if we don't have that as a boundary, right? But I think not least because of things like social media, we have a tendency to get really high, really low, really down on ourselves. At least I do. And I don't think as soon as you've entered into that territory, as much as I love LinkedIn, sign off is what I say. So yeah, so for me, no boundaries, no trade-offs. Which I think logically people might say, well, if you're picking both, you can't give one as much time as you should, right? And I don't buy that, right? Contextually, we try and force the kids to be as bored as possible, as many times as possible. They all want the iPad, they all want these asinine shows on YouTube, right? And I love YouTube. But again, it just like let them be bored upstairs, let them get lost in their imagination. And that is a time that I get back in the day, right? Where I can either rest or work some more. So that's how I would answer that.
Yeah, yeah. I love that piece about like it's not necessarily a trade-off, right? I think it's maybe more strategy. With my previous venture, which was an ed tech company, my kids were actually part of the business. Like they were in here like helping me pack supply boxes for students and they were joining the classes when we were onboarding a new teacher. And so even, allowing the lines to blur a little bit between the business and also your children is also really eye-opening to them. My 9-year-old, he's like, okay, mom, I'm ready to start a business this summer. Will you help me get going? And it's like, I don't think that he would have brought that up had he not experienced some of
No.
the things that I had introduced to him through that other, venture. So when it comes to ROI, I guess, how do you think about ROI in parenting? Not just in the business terms, but more like life strategy. I know you kind of alluded to this a little bit already, but
Yeah.
um, take that a little bit further.
Yeah, no, we'll bring back Mr. and Mrs. iPad into the conversation, right? Which it's like it's so
Yeah.
easy, like, oh my God, it's had been such a long day just handing the iPad. And it just sucks the life out of them. And so for me, right, the highest ROI decisions, like I said, right, the flight that went super well, Like that was put into action 5 years ago. I hate to, it sounds like some LinkedIn cringe post, right? To admit that, that we've been sowing those seeds way back then, but it's so true. And the highest ROI decisions, they're always the toughest in the short term to bear because your kid's going to melt down, right? And you're going to get, the anxiety, like, oh my gosh, he's having a tantrum in Costco. What do I do? Right.
And
With all the other judgy parents at Costco looking at us.
gosh, I don't know. Could you
Um,
catch that eye roll?
yeah, right. I mean, now I've learned to lean into it, right? I'm like, you know what, they're kids. Like this is this, it should, to me, it's a good thing, right? It means I'm letting a little bit more loose. I don't think, rarely do my kids, I should say I don't think my kids, they don't have meltdowns in public. Every once in a while, they've either had too much sugar or they're hungry or they're tired and it might happen. But like I still say, let them melt. And again, I think people would, even their grandma might say, well, that's a little harsh, right? Don't you think? But they're so well adjusted as a result, right? Because they learn, they learn that they get to be how they want to be. You guys make the choice. So, and that's to me very powerful, even for a 6 and a 3.5 year old. Uh, they get to choose how much fun they have and how much success they have that day.
Yeah, we have a very similar approach, I think, in our household. I think one of the things that is unordinarily stressful for us is going out to eat, just because there's so many. Like
I
when
don't,
we go,
and
we're always happy of eight.
I
So,
have no answers for that. I have none. I have two
um,
and it's miserable, let alone you guys, which is
yeah,
where will you guys go? Like Chipotle, McDonald's, where?
no, like if we go to like a sit down restaurant, like we have a restaurant that we like to go to called BJ's
Yeah.
Brew House, and
Uh-huh.
so when we go there, like we talk a lot about like expectations and
Sure.
you know, we look at the menu ahead of time so that we're not like,
Sure.
oh, I don't know what I'm gonna get. And like we can't necessarily ask them in the moment and they don't all read yet. Like my oldest is
Yeah.
9, Chris. So when we're talking about going out to eat, it's a little chaotic. But we've been one to just be like, okay, like this is just not gonna work today. And we'll just like up and like leave. We'll pay for our
Okay.
drinks if people come and we're like, we've talked about the expectation, we've set the expectation. We
Sure.
understand that we're just not gonna have this fight right now. Like it is okay. We're hungry. We're at a restaurant to eat, but we will just go get like a snack. Let's go get a bag of apples from Walmart on the way
Yes.
home, and then we'll just eat at home. But that is
Cheap,
definitely our just like, all right,
cheaper
we can have,
anyway.
huh?
I said it's cheaper anyway.
Oh my gosh, yeah, please. I don't want to spend like $150 just to go sit in a restaurant and then not have a good time. Like that
Me.
is a special thing for us for sure.
So, and we, on this note, right, of high ROI decisions, we've stopped letting them order off the kids menu,
Mm,
because then they don't eat it. And I'm not eating some nasty day old chicken tender. I will eat an adult entree the next day.
that's
And so
so
I highly recommend that. It's like, you know what? I have to pay $10 for each kid's meal. I might as well get them an entree for 20. So that's that.
I don't know if my
You,
husband and I can get through all of
you,
that food. That
you,
definitely moves us a little bit, but that is such a good point. And like the mac and cheese, like come on, the mac and cheese on the kids menu is literally just Kraft most of the time anyway, and it's horrible reheated. So yeah, no, just cost. Um, that is hilarious. I want to switch gears a little bit because we've been
sure.
talking about emotional regulation. You had brought up like being in Costco. We talked about restaurants. Um, you know, Emotional regulation is important, and you had talked about some challenges with your son. What has that looked like for you as you've been navigating this, either in social context or at home? Like, how do you kind of build that up?
No, I mean, and I give my son a hard time, right? I think I have to. My daughter, they're like cats. They come out potty trained practically already, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know if I'm allowed to say stuff like that on the podcast. No,
Yeah,
the
go for it.
boy's like he's more rambunctious. He wants to press the red button more. That not who knows? It could be the opposite for others, but for us, that's how it works. For me, right? So from a very early age, the first thing, they stub a toe, they hit their head, they get angry at something, it's take a breath. Take a breath. Take a breath. And the first time we tried it, it would barely work, if at all. But then after that, it's two or three sobs or two or three yelps, and then they're taking a breath. And then they'll sob some more, but then they will take another breath. It immediately calms them down. But what I'm trying to get through them is like, I don't want you to have any kind of reaction to this at all, right? And that's brutal. Some people might not like, what if
Mm.
some huge injustice occurs, right? I think other parents would say, no, no, react how you feel. And I just, I've, it's never gone well for me, because you can always, there's there's a lot to saving face in life, right? Of course, if there's a huge, yes, you should, you're allowed to have feelings. But for me, teaching them to manage that, teaching them, just the management portion is so important. Um, I would also say that it's maybe a bit off topic here, right? Though is we kind of just it kind of is irrelevant. Gosh, it sounds so bad. These feelings are irrelevant because at the end of the day, your child can achieve anything if they're willing to work hard enough. They can achieve anything they want if they're willing to work for it. If that's emotional happiness or solitude or whatever, if they work for it, they can achieve that, right? Um, and this is like, let us to, I don't compliment how intelligent they are, right? I think my parents did a pretty decent job with me, but you know what? They did too much. They complimented my intelligence, which is funny because there's not much there. Um, but uh, I see what it does when I compliment their hard work. They keep thinking that struggle is normal.
I think one of the things that jumped out about that one was, the effort, right? Like rewarding effort and understanding that when you do encounter things that are hard, you're gonna have emotions. Like you might feel frustrated, you might feel sad that you're not, seeing reaping the reward right now, the instant gratification, like that takes time. But also at the same time, they're building, resilience and perseverance and empathy, like the understanding that when you go through something hard, then, oh, if they're going through something hard, like that emotional intelligence piece, right? Like the empathy piece of like, oh, I know what this feels like. So maybe I can, reach out to this person and check in on them or whatever it is. And that's what we hope to build, I think, from the business standpoint too, right? It's
Yeah.
like it's more than just a sale. Like I care about you as a person. Like, oh, how are things going? Before we even jumped in today, I asked, how'd the vacation go last week? Like that's the human element. And so it sounds like you're doing all the right things there. And then all of
Well,
the
and it's like,
come in.
It it's like, what's easy in life? There's nothing easy in life. Maybe sometimes waking up in the morning is the easiest thing you'll do all day, right? Um, I had a friend, I still have him. His dad, they're quite wealthy. And, I was talking to his dad. He said, Chris, I don't want my son to have to work as hard as I did. It was a stressful day. We were playing at his house. And I was a teenager at that point, and it struck me as odd, but you've done really well for yourself, right? And I asked him, because he's a plumber. That's what he'd tell me, right? He was a plumber. And I asked him, like, what's hard about your day? He tells me whatever. Um, and I'm like, he says, I would rather have my son going to something like medicine or law or technology, right? And I said, easy, easy. Like, you own 32 plumbing trucks, right? And so, you're, wait a minute, wait a minute, right? So, I think we have to be very, yeah, it pays to struggle. And that's what we're trying to teach the kids as much as possible. So, yeah, I mean, yeah,
And
they
it's not
need to
like they're
struggle as much as
struggling,
possible.
right?
No,
They're not
right.
like
Yeah.
struggling,
Yeah.
struggling. Like there's still like care and support and like they're not just like out there on the street or something.
At least from my wife, I would say.
All right, all right. Well, then switching gears now to talk about just dads in the trenches. What are some of the things that parents or maybe moms that are listening in today specifically, what do they not understand about dads who are in the trenches of parenting? Like, what are some of those like misconceptions from your perspective?
Gosh, yeah. All right, ladies, listen up. No,
Take
how
notes.
many?
Here we go.
Yeah, right. Uh, that I think we're here to have this. I think she'll laugh at this. I think lots of anyone who knows me, but that we're here to help and that we're very coachable, right?
Mm,
Even this, like, have you ever met a person who wasn't stubborn? I guess is my next question, right? There,
not that I can
I
recall.
So whenever someone says, "Oh, that person's stubborn," I'm like, "Oh." they must really be stubborn because all humans are stubborn, right? No, I bring that up, right? We all have flaws. I mean, obviously, some of us are quite stubborn, um, but I would say, especially between spouses, like you have to create an environment where it's safe to have these flaws so that they can be addressed. And that takes a lot of time. That takes a lot of patience to have a safe space. Um, I remember, I don't know if I should share. I'm going to share this anyway because it's pretty funny and it's endearing about, my wife, Brittany. She, when we moved in together, she's a clean person, right? And I'm a guy. I'll leave that one there, right? And she's not OCD or anything like that. She's tidy and clean and organized. Um, and I would always lay down on the couch and I would pull the coffee table closer to me to put
Mm,
my water on it while I'm watching TV. And every 5 or 10 minutes, when she'd come out of the room or whatever, she would move the coffee table back. And it took me like weeks to realize, wait a minute, why does she move this back? Is she trying to torment me? And it caused a huge blow up, right? And it was really
oh,
funny because in hindsight, this stupid argument was about like, hey, you don't actually have to move that coffee table. I was just using it for convenience, right? But we had to learn, like, you learn how to communicate, right? You learn about others' tendencies. You learn what battles to pick. Uh, and if you're having so many battles, well, that's for another podcast, right? But yeah, I would say that we're coachable and that we want to help. And that we also have egos. So you're just going to have to, because we want to do well for our household, right? And we don't, it should be, I think and this is always where I might get pushback. We'll see, but the wife should support the husband and the husband should support the wife, right? And that's, you choose what those definitions mean. So, and you choose what to bring in the B word again, right? What boundaries you have, what will you choose to condone and support?
yeah. Yeah. And also that piece of like passivity too, right? Like if you don't address it, then sometimes things go one way. So like again, like to your point, a whole nother podcast could be about just the marriage part of it all and balancing that as the role models for your kids.
And I've got to
Um,
ask, like how many couples, how many people, whether it's, and this is something that I will do with co-founders, with employees, with myself, with wife, with kids, with family, like, you know, I see a lot of people that want to take everything seriously,
mm,
right? And it's like, no, like name your top three. Like if you could fix three things in your life just this week, if you could spend 5 days fixing them or putting in plans to fix them down the road, what would those three things be? First of all, humanity. Can you imagine how humanity would function if we all just picked one thing a week? I mean, essentially every problem in the world would end. Now, every human picking three things a week they want to get better at, right?
there
It's
you
going to be insane. But so many people, I see this a lot. Sometimes people are either too careless or they want to serve too much,
go. Mm,
right? And if you want to serve too much, like what if you're serving the wrong master? What if you're just trying to stick your thumb in the damn holes, right? So I would say take a step back and figure out what you actually want to address. So
that's a good one. I feel like we just need to like have a moment of silence for that. I'll be like, okay, let it sink in. What can you internalize? What can you take away from that? To then,
it takes
what are,
courage. But it takes so much courage
yeah,
because
yeah.
it's like, hey, meh, like and it's so how do you bring up a flaw your spouse has? People are going to think I'm like just pointing at Brittany all day long. No, she's the pointer. No, I'm kidding. Right?
Put in
We
the
talk
air.
about these things together, right? Do we want to, what? And the kids, right? They're so observant, even if you don't want them to be, even if you think you're hiding or obscuring something. We don't buy soda anymore because they're just going to drink it, right? Um, we're on the LaCroix train. I don't know if you guys are on that. It's tremendous, right? Uh, and it's so they see everything. So you just have to. And one haunting thought that I have is like, what gifts do you want to bestow upon your children? Because temper could be one, laziness could be one, so many things, right? Because they're living with you. And that to me, like that one's pretty brutal. Um, that one's just brutal. Like that one's always a kick in the butt in the morning. So
Yeah, I think we've talked about that on another podcast too of, children are sponges. We know this from like a developmental standpoint, right? Like they will do what you do, not what you say. And that only gets worse as they approach like teenage years and things. So, what are they learning by what you're doing or what value you show to things? Is work always pulling you away from them to where then when they're going to be a dad or a mom or a spouse, that they're always going to just pour into work instead of being there for the people that are in their home. All of those things have implications. And it's not even conscious, right? Like sometimes we just don't even realize. It's like, oh man, I've got a
yeah.
big project coming up. Oh man, this is a tough quarter. Got to make a lot of progress. But then at the same time, like they're soaking all of that in. And so that is that intentionality, I think is a big word that comes to mind of like, okay, I'm going to make this choice. This is how my action is going to match that. And then my kids will hopefully see that. Or even just having the conversation with them too is helpful. Like, oh yeah, this is happening at work, but I'm super excited that we're having dinner together.
No, and it's so like I do all of the cooking and Brittany does all of the cleaning around the house, right? So I can't wait until they like, why don't you never clean? Well, because my dad always cooked, right? We'll see. We'll see. I think Eliza, our daughter, she's curious about that stuff, right? And Nolan, he's a little bit more of a, he's more tidy, right? So we'll see, right? Those boundaries, but it just works for us, right? And people, they always, you know, it's so funny. This is again so bad. I think I'm probably oversharing too much, but at parties, people don't know me. And I always find the group of ladies, and I always say, like when we get to talking about things, I somehow always find a way to interject. Yeah, I make Brittany do all the cleaning. And ladies, they're like, oh, they're just, let's grind. I mean,
Bye.
don't worry. I do all of the cooking. I do all of the cooking. This is just what we've agreed to. This works for us.
Is that like rage bait, but in real life? Like,
Yes, it is. I have to. I'm like, all right, yeah, you're right. The Miller's the evil guy. Here he is
oh
again.
gosh.
So,
That's hilarious. Oh my goodness. Well, we do have a couple questions that were written in by our users at LaunchFamily. And so Emmy, which is our on-call parenting guide support system for navigating, modern family life. So we have three questions that I want to kind of go through today to be respectful of them as well. So the first one is my partner seems checked out after work. How do I get him more involved with the kids? So Chris, what would you say to a dad who's tapped out but still wants to show up?
yeah, right. Yeah, run towards the harshest truths
Mm.
because you're not going to solve that one without accepting some of these harsh truths, which is, like I wish I could pull more time and energy in the day out of my hat, but it's not how life works. I would ask, why are we spending so much time at work, right? Um, Lifestyle creep is a thing. I'll say that there. I think everyone can read into that one how they want, right? Um, this is one of the reasons. This is a bizarre hidden benefit of being a startup founder. The reality is, as a startup founder, you're working so much more. But it's to me, it's true intellectual freedom, because I don't have someone coming down on me for a formality, right? Why didn't you update your CRM? Well, that's important, right? To me, yeah. So what does that have to do with this question, right? Um, is that the reality is that you are going to have to, I would say, look at the source of these problems, right? It could just be a tough night. It could be a tough quarter at work. That happens. All right, everyone, we got to get a grip here. Has it been going on though for years, right? I know several people that it's been going on for years. And the honest truth is they're not leading healthy lives. So they're not exercising and eating properly and they're drinking too much. Okay. And so they have less energy at home. They're completely zonked out, as I say. They don't save enough, so they don't ever feel like they have the flexibility to change jobs if they wanted. That process is hard enough, let alone having to do it when you least expect it, right? So I would ask yourself, it's not about, in that particular case, the answers are way farther back, right? they're going to some answers might be found when you wake up in the morning and what you do throughout the day, because it's you're not going to invent more energy when you get home. So I would just look at those harsh truths about the lifestyle that you're living. And I really truly believe that over time anyone can build the the life and the destiny that they have in mind for themselves. But it takes a lot. I mean, it just takes a lot of work and dedication. And drinking too much or eating too much or not sleeping well, these things subtract, right? You can see, those are important things. Those are just examples. So I would say look at the harshest truths, and it has very little to do with what happens when dad gets home at 5:30. It's already happened either hours ago, days ago, weeks ago, months ago, or in some cases years ago.
That is so powerful. I think, one of the things that comes to mind too is the example of, okay, well, maybe you were just up scrolling and so you didn't get enough sleep. And so then, yeah, of course you're going to have the consequence of I'm going to be tired tomorrow because I didn't get enough sleep before I went to work. And then, then you miss out on that quality time with your kids because that's the only time that you might see them. And so then it kind of comes down to like, what is the priority? I think is like a good question. Like, what do you value in life? Like, what do you want more of? And then how do you adjust your day or your mindset to then meet those needs that you want? Or
I
those.
I mean, and it's like, how many times do you say no how many times do you say no to the sugary beverage or the bad food or the whatever, the scrolling at night? That it's tough. And so people, it's kind of brutal, because the truth is that I mean, we all make our own beds. So you can choose to sleep on a soft one at night, or one that's, just
Little
really
lumpy.
painful.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little lumpy, that's for sure.
Oh, goodness. Well, our next question is my toddler throws tantrums constantly. My husband loses his cool. Please help. How can dads handle the emotional chaos of parenting without shutting down?
Yeah, I mean, my first question is have you pointed this out to the dad, right? Is that half the time they haven't, right? Half the time it's gossip, or they talk to their mom or whoever, and they don't actually ever talk to the dad because it's a really awkward conversation, right? Um, you know, gosh, that's tough, right? Um, to me, it's so important for to the dad might not notice he's doing it, right? Um, and so I think the first thing is just sharing, especially once he's calmed down, and when everyone is in a safer place, right? If the dad's kind of angry, you don't want to do it right then, but to actually talk about it, you have to. But then you have to have an environment where you can actually talk about, hey, you get a little angry when the kid loses a temper. But then I'd also ask, why is the toddler constantly having tantrums? Well, because they're a toddler, right? But then some of it might be man-made, right? It could be because you took the iPad away. We shouldn't have the iPad to begin with, right? So again, I think all of these are solvable with enough work. Yeah, simple as that. But again, it's simple for me to say, but I would say actually having, that conversation with the dad is the first step. Um, yeah, it's as simple as that.
Yeah, I think something else that comes to mind too that we've talked about on another episode was like this generational impact too, right? Like our default parenting is the way that we were parented. And so, if the father figure in the home or the husband, if he was not able to, express his feelings or have tantrums, like that could set him off like, oh, this is an unsafe thing to do. Why is my child then doing this? Like, this is unsafe, not even realizing that he's maybe triggered by the tantrum that the toddler is doing. So, I think awareness is like the word that comes to mind when you were talking about, oh, it could be because of the iPad. Like it starts with observation, right? Like what is triggering the toddler? Is this triggering the dad? Do I need to have a conversation with the dad? Am I noticing any patterns? And then that's when you can kind of take a step forward, hopefully together towards, a resolution.
But then you have to have so much courage to do that, right? Because it's again, these are deep-seated flaws and or characteristics that we all have as humans. So it's tougher. It's so easy to sit here and say, "Oh, just do it," right? But then actually doing it and having that conversation, I'm trying to think about the first time, like I leave the cupboards open in the house, right?
Chris? Oh my goodness.
So, right. And so, like, I'm sure I look back, like, and I'm sure there have been more serious things, but I leave the cupboards open, and I remember the first time Brittany pointed it out, and I felt like so vulnerable, right? This is acid. You're leaving the cupboards open, right? I didn't know I did it. Who knows? I can't even remember how Britt said it, but um, you know, like, hey, can you shut the cupboard after because you go into the kitchen and it just looks like a mess, right? Um, and so again, but and then eventually you learn like, oh, she's not coming at me here, right? So I don't think it's hardly about, I don't think it's actually about the dad losing his cool when the toddler has a tantrum. It probably starts way before. So as do all of my assessments of these things, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's been the underlying current from the answers is like, okay, things start now. Today's a great day to start something new. Like you could
Yeah.
rewrite from today, knowing that it might take a while. But
Well, it's tough. I mean, we've put uh men on the moon, right? And so I don't think anything should feel insurmountable anymore, right? But I don't think we should delude ourselves into thinking that it will take something other than just, courage and persistence, right? So,
yeah, for sure. For sure. The last question from the community is it normal to miss pre-kid freedom, even if I do love my children? So what's your honest take on this one?
yeah, it could be from all the sleep deprivation. I don't remember what it was like before kids, right? So, uh,
Right there with you.
yeah, I mean, I'd ask a question, right? Which is like, what do you actually miss specifically? Like being able to, wake up at 10 a.m. from like with a hangover,
Mm,
like kids, they don't have anything to do with you not being able to, you're just not 22 anymore, right? Like, you don't fear that consequence because an hour later after breakfast and some water, you're back at it again and you have the energy for it, right? It's an asinine way to spend your time. Pardon me. So many people are this guy, he's a real straight edge. Trust me. I've got my vices, right? No, I mean, but to need time like away because your kid's melting down, again, it's like, I think it's a you issue, frankly speaking, right? And that's me probably not having as much compassion as I should. Um, I think I think you have to take more responsibility for yourself, right? And I think that's a good thing. It's not, I don't mean to, what's the word? I don't mean to like admonish you about it. But I think people that you have to take, more responsibility for yourself. And, on that vein, right? Like, do you want to raise a serial killer or do you want to raise a functioning member of society? Right. I mean, these are choices that you have to make earlier on. And if you do that, um, I mean, I should say that I think it can be self-indulgent to miss pre-kid freedom because now that I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, maybe if you would have asked me that 3 years ago, right, when I a 3-year-old and a newborn, it might be different, right? Maybe I'm a hypocrite, but um, I have much better time management now. I have a much better handle on energy and sleep and diet and what they do. I understand opportunity costs much better. I have a much better handle on uh, all of those opportunity costs now. So for me, it's, as the kids say these days, 10x my game to have kids. So if you're looking like, oh, I missed this, then go do it for an hour. Then get away for an hour and do it. That's one of those things where if you need that to feel sane again, right, then you need to do it. Um, and I keep bringing up food, sleep, drinking. These are all things that can contribute to a really great experience during the day or something that's pretty miserable. And you just it's going back to question number one, right, which is these trade-offs, and everything. This is the opportunity cost, right? Is no, you don't get to indulge in all of these sensory pleasures all day long. Eventually, those chickens come home to roost. So I would say, yeah, that's that.
Yeah. There's a big responsibility as a parent to make sure that, your child ends up being that, contributing citizen of society. I think one of those it is like that balance piece too that you bring up, like, oh, if this is something that you're missing of this freedom, or like then plan a girls trip that's a weekend, like if you need to travel, like if you've got and you're missing that, do it. But within the realm of I'm still a mom, I'm still care about my kids, I'm still gonna, be there for them on Monday morning after my girls trip weekend. Whatever that may look like. And I think, you know, in this day and age in society, there's so much pressure. And I know this isn't an episode about dads, but I think that there's so much pressure on the household in general, like the whole family, the dad, the mom to show up, to be, both are working, both are taking care of the household, and that is a lot of pressure. And so, and I think it's okay, like as a human, to want a little bit of freedom if you've been connected with your kids. My husband and I are going out on a date, and we haven't been on a date in like, gosh, probably 3 or 4 years because our
Not 9 years.
yeah, 9, 10 years. I don't know. We've been married for 11,
Okay.
but we're going out on a date tonight, and I have severe anxiety about it. I'm like, we're going to be 10 minutes away from the house, but I have a 7-month-old plus five more older ones. So it's like, yes, that is my moment of freedom, but I also feel like maybe I can't enjoy it in the same way that I might have done before pre-kid, right? Like my kids are always like top of mind. So
I'm gonna say that's a you problem, Jessica.
okay, yeah, I'll just take it. Yeah, it's probably just a me problem. Yeah, we
No, no, clearly, and it's interesting that you bring that up because it's like I would say too, I would say people, we probably miss being aimless and having a world of possibility
mm,
more than we actually miss specific activities. Because if you wanted to do that specific activity, you could. I should say, most of them, right? Um, you could do that specific activity. But it's, yeah. And that, I have found that I do have to reserve time to be a bit aimless every once in a while for an hour, 2 or 3 hours, where you can actually collect your thoughts. You don't have someone asking for something from you, because especially in the startup game, wife, kids, customers, all of these things, employees, someone always needs something from you, and that's really great because you can give it to them, and it just furthers the mission, so to speak, for everyone, right? But I would say if there's going to be one specific suggestion I make for anyone who listens to this, it would be to at least give yourself a few hours a month of uninterrupted, aimless time. And it's amazing how much clarity can come back into view after that time. And so I don't think if you can do that regularly, that idea of pre-kid freedom and missing, I don't think it will be a thing for anyone anymore. I think it will actually restore some clarity. It's nice to get away, and that's that. So I would say before your date tonight, give yourself 3 or 4 hours of alone time. Okay, away from it. So what are we at? About 16 hours away from the kids, I guess is what we're talking about. I don't know if you can swing that, but it might help.
I don't know. Well, I'll work up my stamina towards that.
Yeah,
Okay, like
yeah.
we'll start with like an hour, 2 hours. That's my homework. But I think that that's a great perspective, and I think an ending note too to all of this is, the work that we do day in and day out. The delayed gratification, knowing that our intentionality and our priorities is something that our kids are also watching, and that it's okay to need a break. It's okay to take a step away, but also know the gravity of the situation, the responsibility that you have at home, which is also very grounding. And as you mentioned, like it's 10x your ability as a person from having kids. And I completely agree. The more kids I have, I think I'm at like almost like 60, 70x now. So we're good.
So yeah, I can't imagine what you just, because there's no phrase you said, there's no free minute anymore, and that's great because you're always doing something meaningful, and that's the best way to lead a life.
And right there. No, Chris, I just want to thank you so much for bringing the honesty, humor, and the heart to the conversation. The perspective on fatherhood leadership and the everyday absurdity of parenting is one more thing that parents really needed to hear. So, for our listeners, if you want more real talk from real parents, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and check the show notes for links to connect with Chris and learn more about Launch Family. Parenting doesn't come with a manual, but conversations like this remind us that we're not alone in all of it. Until next time, keep showing up and laugh when you can.